Hi everybody, this is Hero back with another Dragonflight video or a War Within video, and I have been tweaking away at a talent tree for the Oracle Priest, Disc Priest plus Holy, because I'm fairly disappointed in the power infusion system that they are putting in place, mostly because of the way in which they are describing how it works. So it's like TF in League of Legends, cycling through a spell, choosing it in the middle of combat, which I do not think is a viable strategy. Also because I think power infusion is such a contentious button in general that you force players to go without something, which in turn forces the talent tree, the hero talent tree, to overcompensate for the power level that PI gives you as a standard. So I think that design is just going to harm Priest going forward because it will get nerfed if it's too strong, and it needs to be too strong to overcome the loss of PI. There's other pieces to it as well, which just comes with what I would think of as a bland set of design options for the talents themselves. Small increments, which are okay, things like extension of atonement, and another bounce, and shield granting a stack of mending, these kinds of pieces. But I don't think they really make good on the flavor of the theme that they suggested for Oracle, which is this sort of looking ahead but with a disc and holy mindset. So you are thinking about what tools you will need in the future and how to make good on them. What I did here is I put together a similar structure with 3 choice nodes. There are 2 active spells, and it is all based on the combination of Power Word Shield and Prayer of Mending. Now, Power Word Shield is a button in the Disc Priest arsenal that is used sort of only a small amount, I would say, or is maybe 8% of your overall contribution to healing in both Raid and Mythic Plus. In PvP, it's obviously a little bit different, but also Atonement is quite strong there. Whereas Prayer of Mending is a little more central to the gameplay of Priest in both Mythic Plus and in Raid, and it also still comes out to around 8 or 9%, maybe up to about 10% of your overall throughput. So I'm trying to build something that is not overpowered as far as the major theme going here with Oracle, but yet still gives you a lot of flavorful interactions. And the way we've done this is we have dropped the CD of essentially Prayer of Mending down to 10 seconds, and we've increased the baseline CD of Shield up to 10 seconds, so getting that happy medium. We are blending the spells together, reducing it by haste, and then we are applying all the benefits of either Power Word Shield talents in the Disc Priest or Prayer of Mending talents in the Holy Priest kit. So each priest will then think about how to make best use of Prayer of Divination in their gameplay, and so there's a lot of talents that are going to build into what's going on there. But I like that this is kind of in the 10% range, that it's addressing that part of the gameplay while also indexing into lots of other pieces. What I would say is what I'm doing that's a little bit different is I am forcing the Prayer of Mending ticks that would normally go off to be shields rather than heals. And what I'm hoping to do is maintain the mastery of both sides, so that even though when this shield procs as a Prayer of Mending tick, it is producing the Holy Priest's mastery, Echo of Light, and also it is always going to be affected by Disc Priest Mastery Grace, as if Atonement was on the character. So that ensures that you have a mastery tie-in at all times to Prayer of Divination. This is partly due to the fact that we are increasing the CD on essentially Power Word Shield, which makes it a little bit worse, and Holy Priest wouldn't have any access to scaling if you make it a shield. And I think keeping it as a shield ensures that you have maximum usage of this button. So you're kind of bumping up the percentage influence of this spell in overall throughput, and I think that's fine. I don't think we need to make a spell that dominates your throughput, but if we're doing a major theme, it should feel good as a hero spell to press this button. Second row, we have Mend the Past. When you take damage, cast Prayer of Divination on yourself. It can only occur once every minute. We index into this a little bit further, but a nice little defensive boost. Not too strong, but kind of reasonable. Cast here refers to both parts, the shield up front, as well as the 5 stacks of Prayer of Divination that are going onto you. So these all interact with different kits in different ways. So on the Power Word Shield side, if you've done a bunch of indexing on Disc Priest, they would all be benefiting when you say cast. In the middle, your first choice node, Awareness versus Purity of Soul. This is having to do with the Dispel theme. So I'd like Oracle. If you think of an Oracle of an ancient Greek Sibyl in the temple, reading leaves, this sort of thing, foretelling future. You think about magic, harmful and good, and how they interact with that. And I like that we can bring together the idea of a better version of Dispel into this kit. Nothing overpowered, but something that gives a unique profile to Oracle above other healers. So I don't think we should give them a kick, for example, but I think having them get access to a little bit more utility on the Dispel side is great. So on the one hand, you can index into one more Dispel every 1 minute. So if you need to dispel multiple things, you can do that in a little easier way. And then also, if you have an encounter where you don't really need the extra Dispel, you can just get another cast of Prayer of Divination whenever you are doing your normal Dispels. Righteous Hope, every 15 casts, or 10 for Holy, Smite, Holy Fire, Renew, or Heal also casts Prayer of Divination on a friendly target within 40 yards. I think of this as better as a smart target, meaning it's preferring targets that do not have any stacks of Prayer of Divination. What you can see on this side is the Disc Priest can take advantage of this in their ramp. So if you're really clever, you could be casting up toward this buff, and then when you go to do your ramp, you are guaranteed to proc an additional cast of Prayer of Divination, which is going to put Atonement onto a target, allowing you to then cut down on the number of Renew casts or Flash of Heal casts you need to build up your scaling. So I like that you can think about how to use Righteous Hope. There's some ways to play well with it. It's reduced for Holy because typically in most PvE content as well as PvP, it's a little bit more difficult for Holy Priests to get in the damage portions of this, but it also then buffs up the heal side. So if you index into all of the heal spells and play that playstyle, you're getting a little bit more value. Obviously, we don't tend to cast Renew, so for Disc Priest, this is more their spell. Renew is an atonement applicator, and with good haste, it's actually a fairly good spell all by itself for Disc, due to how atonement works with Renew, meaning you get the bonus because Renew is putting atonement on a target, and therefore it's ticking at a higher rate than the tooltip. So I like the indexing on both sides of this, and we need to pivot it a little bit more towards Holy. You could probably tune this a little to make it slightly worse or stronger if you needed to negate the power of this, but anyways, that's general indexing. Row 3, Time of Need. When Mend the Past procs from here, once a minute. Your next Flash Heal grants the target 10% haste for 10 seconds. So one thing I want the Oracle to maintain from the original design that Blizzard put forward is this idea of a support spec for others, for damage dealers or for healers or tanks. And I like the idea of building that in a subtle way into the kit and giving agency to the player on when to produce that rather than forcing them to do a mini game all of the time to get the effect, and then having the more and more complicated ways of approaching that, whether it's going for 30% bonuses that don't replicate, so bouncing back and forth between two options, looking for that option in the roulette that happens in that mechanic. I think it's better to tie it into a spell that is either marginal or cast less often, or it could be cast less often if you wanted to min-max this. So Flash Heal does show up in a number of builds for both Holy and Disc in various ways. In Mythic Plus, you see Flash Heal a bit more. But the point would be that when this proc goes off, you have a button that you can use to apply a haste bonus to a friendly target. And I like that idea of looking ahead, knowing this is coming up because you're tracking when Mend the Past has occurred, and then planning out how to use this buff appropriately on the right person. It seems less onerous. It would just come up like a Surge of Light proc, that kind of a thing, and then off you go. Time of Relief, again, sticking with the Dispel theme to couple together with this new Power Word Shield and Prayer of Mending approach, just giving some more utility. In earlier versions of this, I had it reduced by 30 seconds, but I think that's probably too powerful, and we don't want the hero talents to dominate and completely be unbalanceable, but I do think giving Mass Dispel a particular niche for Oracle is a useful way to incentivize people to pick up this spec that doesn't break the game. So Mass Dispel is not always valuable, but if there was a moment where it really was, then Oracle becomes an interesting choice. So again, resetting the Prayer of Divination is another way to think about this. I don't know if this is good enough that you would want Disc Priest to ramp with with Time of Relief. I don't know if the CD would be worth it, but since it's instant cast, perhaps it is. I don't know. Another choice node, Time of Life versus Time of Death. This is, again, playing around one of the more interesting gameplay loops for Priest in general since the rework to the talents, which is Time of Life, a spell that I really like because it's reactive. It seems to me to be linked in to the Oracle's theme in general. That is, you are intervening at a really important moment of triage, and you're there to save the day. So on the one hand, you have the more passive version, which adds a shield to the target for 25% of the amount healed, which I think is probably maybe a little weak, but again, sometimes with a 750% spell power coefficient, Time of Life can heal for quite a lot, so we don't want to make that too overpowered. And then I wanted to fit in a piece that I thought was really kind of in the theme of the Oracle, which is Time of Death. So converting Shadow Word Death into a friendly cast. And the goal here is to mimic the Power Word Life gameplay that you're casting this spell on a low life friendly target. But the goal is you're building in kind of that Guardian Spirit gameplay of if the target dies within that 10-second window, then instead you have brought them back to life. And I like tying into Oracle this feeling of preemptively seeing the future and intervening to save their life with your clever gameplay. So a 3-minute cooldown seems reasonable to me for that. And it's a gamble, right? That's part of what an Oracle is saying is this may happen, but it may not. And I like that Time of Death can allow a player to index into some of those moments of glory without it being overpowered. Our second active ability, Prophetic Word Wrath. This is, again, similar in trying to grab onto this sense of future things that are going to happen without stepping on Evoker's toes. So it is a 2-minute CD, instant cast, and you are debuffing some target, which will then absorb, the debuff that is, will absorb all the damage that all party members or raid members are doing to the target for the next 6 seconds. After the 6 seconds expires, it explodes and does whatever damage had been stored to the target, increased by 3%. So this is a way to modify really your raid or your dungeon, or in PvP, your burst damage window for your team. And you're amplifying it only really by 3%, and yet that's enough, I think, to give a substantive gameplay loop for the Oracle Priest. That yes, you're amplifying their damage, but you're not just increasing the damage of one player by 10% or increasing the magic dealer's haste by 35% or bumping one person's mastery. Instead, you're just taking whatever was given to the raid and you're increasing it by 3%. Now, there's a couple of pieces here that I really like about this design. It really fits the theme because there's many encounters or bosses where there's downtime or there's a bonus damage moment or something of that variety, where players can't really do their damage. And what Oracle can say is, hold on a second, what if we can still target this boss or this mob, and it's in a kind of quote-unquote immune phase, or it's taking reduced damage, but instead you're sort of putting out there a bubble around it that absorb whatever damage we could do for that window, and then you time it properly so that the window of immunity ends on the target, and then the damage goes off. So you haven't wasted that downtime. You're essentially extending for the whole raid, or for the Mythic Plus group, or in the case of PvP for your burst damage windows, 6 seconds in another direction into the immunity. That's a kind of interesting sort of gameplay that for me fits the Oracle's ethos, which is looking ahead into the future, foretelling, life and death, these sorts of things. And then I have a hook there for critical strike for the Oracle themselves, meaning if you are inclined to go toward critical strike, this amplifies the damage a little bit more, so it incentivizes that. Now, we could take that out if it turned out to be a problem, but you can see where I'm going from for prophetic word thematically. This final choice node, Sonorous Voice versus Unending Praise, has to do with our major cooldowns, Divine Hymn versus Barrier. And the goal here is to just mix and match a little bit while also tying in the theme of Prayer of Divination. So on the one hand, you can choose to, as a disc player, put down your bubble. Everyone runs in and gets a stack, which is great for damage moments because the shield then bounces around. For Holy, when you're channeling it, you're giving some DR to your friends. 3% might be even still a little bit high, but the point is it blends those two pieces together nicely with a little throughput boost. Unending Praise ties in the theme of dispelling that's also present in this tree, so you get a bit of a revival effect, if you'd like, from these spells. And that might, again, be too much power in the hero talents, but I think it's kind of appropriate to head down that road and give a bit more, because essentially you're looking at moving from, level 70 up to level 80 worth of content, right? So you're expecting to get some power. Diligent Plea, when you gain a charge of Holy Word Serenity, Sanctify, Penance, Radiance, or Prayer of Divination, your next Renew cast will increase your target's mastery by 2% for 10 seconds, stacking up to 10 times. So potentially 20% mastery boost. Again, thinking about time of need and the 10% haste that you can offer to someone, this is linking it into Renew. And I really like how this spell offers very different kinds of options for Disc and for Holy. For Holy Priest, Renew is a spell typically that is cast by other spells, so our casts of Prayer of Healing, for example, can be indexed into to give us Renew casts. Salvation puts Renew on. So these are passive things that still add up to quite a significant amount of healing. You can also always cast Renew if you'd like, but Renew is the spell on Disc's side that tends to be used to build our ramp. And so you can see that on the one hand, Disc is probably going to put out more of these mastery buffs in smaller portions, unless they change their gameplay entirely to make use of Diligent Plea, whereas Holy is likely going to benefit from letting it stack up to 10 times and then applying a full 20% buff to somebody. It doesn't have to be that way, but you can see how these interactions give very different playstyle flavors while retaining the same oracular goal of helping your friends and doing this kind of utility. So I like how it's tied into these pieces. Obviously, Penance is going to give you charges a little quicker too. So on Disc, you're getting access to that a bit more. But I think overall, this is kind of something you can play around in different ways. Finally, Fate Scribe. So this is a kind of capstone active ability. It is a channel that puts on the ground some kind of area or divine symbol, if you'd like. So you channel for 2 seconds, and then after you're finished channeling, it produces this ground effect. Anyone who touches it gets a sealed fate buff for 3 seconds, and the cooldown of this spell is reduced when you cast your normal spell. So Prayer of Divination, one of the holy words, or Renew. So again, you're tying it into both sides of the spec. You're leaning towards disc priests in their ramps being able to make use of this. If they cast Fate Scribe before they do their ramp, then their renew casts will contribute to getting it back off CD. So you're not really a detriment in that way. And then holy words, if you're building and spending a lot of holy words, you're also reducing Fate Scribe. So good interactions, I think, there. And then Sealed Fate, I think, is when this buff expires, heal the target for 15% of all the damage taken while under the effect of Sealed Fate, and gain 1 stack of Prayer of Divination. The goal of this is to give the Oracle an opportunity of excellence when it comes to big bursts of damage. Whether this is a PvP moment in Arena when your target is getting hit, you can channel this down on the ground just before the go. Whether it's in a raid when a huge burst mechanic is coming off or about to go off and everyone stacks in bubble in general. Or in Mythic Plus when there's some pulsing AoE from mobs, so you've done a gigantic pull and you need to make sure everyone's going to be safe. You can find ways to use Fate Scribe that are, excellent and show off your capacity to think ahead. I think this theme, to me, is what really inspires me about what Blizzard was trying to do with the original Oracle. This idea of planning ahead, of seeing the future, of knowing what's going to happen. And I think this gameplay idea of Fate Scribe really grabs onto that theme. So that's why it's here. And you could tweak the numbers a little bit of a 5-minute CD being reduced. Maybe it needs to be 10 minutes. Maybe it's too much damage absorption, so it would need to be 5 to 10% of all the damage taken so that it's not like rewind. But you can see the idea here of getting the right sort of flavor. It's not just an instant cast button. You have to plan ahead. You have to have time to channel it. It could be interrupted in PvP or by a knock-up by somebody. Everyone needs to know that it's happening. And there's only really a 3-second window within which you can ensure people are grabbing it. So they go in, as soon as they go in, they get the buff for 3 seconds, and then it cannot be reapplied. So overall, my goal with this spec is to do my best to catch these 3 major pieces. On the one hand, we're trying to grab this idea of planning ahead. Second, we want to blend together core pieces that aren't overpowered in each kit. So I think Shield and Mending hit that category of sort of maybe 10% to 15% overall. That's kind of 15 is kind of high of overall throughput. So we're slotting it in there, and then we're making the player play around with those pieces in unique ways. And then I think finally, blending that idea of planning ahead with some utility that gives Oracle a real definitive moment in tying in magic dispels is also kind of the goal here. So I hope you guys enjoy, and let me know if you have other thoughts about either how this tree is playing out or what sorts of trees you think would be appropriate for Blizzard to iterate on as they work on Oracle. Thanks very much for watching, and we'll catch you again next time.